Hi guys, welcome back. Hope everybody's doing well. So in today's video, I just want to give you guys a heads up. It's going to be a long video. I mean, when aren't my videos long? But in this particular video, I am going to be touching on some, I don't know, some sensitive subjects maybe. I'm just like, you know, it's my normal, and it's maybe for me, it's like the information that I'm discussing is not a big deal because I'm not really giving details to things. I'm going to talk a little bit about my dad's passing, and a little bit about, just a little bit about my sister's journey. It's not even the whole story, but it's just, the reason I'm touching on certain situations is because it's the backstory to, I'm talking about like ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. And, you know, if you don't believe in all that stuff, you know, I understand. A lot of people don't. But, you know, if you've experienced stuff like I've experienced and a lot of other people have experienced, then, you know, then you'll be like, wow, that's... But when you hear the stuff, like, it's stuff that you can't make up. Like, nobody can make this stuff up. And, you know, everything that I've talked about has been, they're all facts. It's nothing of it, nothing is exaggerated. Trust me. I'm sparing you guys a lot by not sharing details, because not everything needs to be, you know, put out there for the whole world. I'm already exposing myself, and I'm already talking about things that are not comfortable for me to talk about, that I've never really shared with a lot of people, other than my therapist. And you know, I'm not intending to put my family out there and, you know, embarrass them or make anybody look bad, or, you know, or anything like that. I'm just literally sharing my life with you guys. And I've talked about writing a book, and I'm just struggling with that. I haven't even sat down to even try to continue writing. Maybe I'll finish the book, maybe I won't. But I mean, this is just one way of me. I'm basically giving you like an audible book version of my life. And I'm trying to share as much as I can with you guys, to understand who I am and why I am, you know, why I do the things that I do, why I think the way that I do. You know, it just helps you to get a better understanding of who I am and where I come from. And all the pieces kind of come together when you really get to know me. And, you know, I always say, like, I'm just like that person that a lot of people have said, you know, like, wow, like, you say things like that I could never imagine saying. Like, you know, I say things that people only think of saying, but don't have the nerve to say it. Like, I'm one of those people, and I don't think it's a bad thing. That's just who I am. And, you know, like I said before, a guy that I worked with used to say that I was really eccentric. And at that time, I thought eccentric was like, oh, you're just like the shit, you know, like you're classy, you're bougie. You know, little did I know when I found out what eccentric really meant was just like weird, different, strange. But you know what? I want to be those things. Like, I want to be different than everybody else. I don't want to fit in. I do want to go against the grain, you know? I am that person. And I think as time is going on, I feel just free. I feel free to be who I am, and to share that. And little by little, as I'm doing more and I'm discussing more and I'm sharing more with you guys, I'm getting more comfortable with that. And anyway, so I just want to prepare you. It's a long video. I don't give details to stuff. I am talking a little bit about death, a little bit about drug use, very little, and about spirits and stuff like that. So if it sounds like something that you're interested in, and it sounds like something that, you know, you can relate to, or if you just want to, you know, be curious about who Des is and what Des is about, and it's my life, it's my real life. And yeah, I mean, it had to come in handy for something, right? So I mean, why not share? But anyway, guys, hope you enjoy. Grab a snack, grab a drink, take a bath. You know, it's a long one, so keep watching. Okay, so clearly I've done my brows, and I'm really loving my brow routine. They look a little intense. You know, your brows always look intense before you put any makeup on, especially if you do your brows first. It just looks like bam, bam, you know, kind of like caterpillars almost. Today I did them a little bit thicker than usual, but this is actually the size that I wanted them when I did my little brow routine video. So I'm going to use my Athena palette. Basically, we're just going to sit and hang out and talk. And this is from Bad Habit. I told you guys they come with real good mirrors and some really pretty colors, like gorgeous colors. So I'm not going for any specific look. I don't know what look I'm going for. I'm going to kind of just go for it and just tap in and see what comes out, you know, what the end result is. It's kind of fun when you don't really have a plan. It's a little scary, especially if you're on camera and you don't really know what you're doing. You're kind of just going with it. So talking and recording is always a little bit tricky, but we're gonna make it work. So I am just going to get started. So what is going on with everybody? I'm sure most of you are, obviously, you know, we have tragedies in life and bad things happen, and, you know, especially like Kobe Bryant, you know, and his daughter dying yesterday was like horrific. I couldn't even begin to imagine what his wife is going through right now. Like, she probably didn't even sleep last night. You know, losing your spouse has got to be like really devastating, but, you know, losing your spouse and your child, like, I couldn't imagine. I know what it's like to lose loved ones, you know, I know what it's like to lose, you know, brothers and sister, and, you know, nothing's easy. Everybody's traumas are traumatic to them, regardless of if we've been through something worse. You know, for you, it's bad, and I just don't wish anything like that on anybody. Because unless you've actually been there in those shoes, you can't explain to people what it's like. You can give from your point of view and your version of what it feels like, but you can't ever really put yourself in anybody else's shoes. I just don't think we can. It's just not possible. You know, there's times where I'm like, you know, if you could just be in my shoes for 5 minutes, like, you would totally be like, oh my God, like, that's what a day like is, you know, for her. And you know, we can feel each other's pain. I mean, obviously we're never gonna, and I wouldn't want anybody to really feel my pain. I mean, there's times where I would just be like, and, you know, even still, I would just be like, you know what, if you could be me for 5 minutes, you would flip out. Like, you literally would want to crawl out of your skin. But when you don't really have a choice, you know, you have to just accept it, you know? You have to accept it. Whether we want to or not, you just have to. What choice do you have? Like, you know, this is the hand you're dealt. And you know, it sucks. But, you know, every day is a gift. Every day is a blessing. Every day we wake up. And I know a lot of people say, like, if you're in pain all the time, you know, how is waking up a blessing? You know, like, if you really don't have quality of life, because I've been asked that question, like, a lot of people, you know, or some people that, you know, don't really have a relationship, you know, with God, and really question, you know, whether or not there is a God. And I've had, you know, people ask me, like, you know, if there was a God, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I mean, I believe in God, but, you know, I've had people ask me, like, why do you think God would allow, you know, all these things to happen? You know, if there was a God, why would there be so much, you know, illnesses and deaths and traumas and, you know, child abuse and just rape? But there was this one particular time, my dad died of a heroin overdose. I was 8 months pregnant with my youngest daughter, who is almost 24 now. I was 8 months pregnant with her, and you guys know the story with me and my dad and the strained relationship, or just the weird ass relationship that we had. I mean, just weird, you know. The fact that I still had a relationship with him was weird in itself, but, you know, that's a story for a different day. A lot of people wonder why I continue to have a relationship with him even after all the years that he abused me. I'll go a little further into that later, but when he died, I was living in these townhomes, and I really liked it there. They ended up knocking them down, and they're so it's, I don't know if you live in Denver or Arvada, there's Costco over off of I-70 and Wadsworth, and it was actually on that's where they were. And so they knocked those apartments down. They were really nice too. They knocked those apartments down and they built the Costco. So at that time, that's where I was living. I talked to my dad the day that he died. I was at work. He called me to see how I was feeling. And oddly enough, we had a weird, I don't know. It was just kind of like, he liked to act like nothing happened, you know. Like nothing was ever said. He always denied things, and it was just like so much confusion around that. Like, he denied pretty much a lot of the stuff that he did to me, and, you know, it was like, I guess if you live in denial, in your mind it never happened. I mean, obviously that's not realistic, but in his mind, I guess that's how he was able to sleep at night. Maybe he had to have known what he was doing was wrong. Like, we all know right from wrong, and you know when you're doing something wrong. And how, you know, like, he didn't, I'm sure in his mind he wasn't like, hey, I might die today, like, I'm feeling weird. I just think that somewhere in his mind, subconsciously, he knew that he was gonna die. And so we talked for a little bit, and he asked how I was feeling, and, you know, I told him, and he said, you know, that baby's going to be very much loved, and by a lot of people. And it was just kind of weird. Like, I never, like, you know, it was always just awkward with me and my dad in our conversations, but I was just like, you know, whatever, like, I would just take what he would say and just be like, okay, well, I'm sure my baby will be loved by a lot of people. And at that time, like, me and her dad were kind of like, he wanted to get married, and that's a whole long story too. Which, looking back, I kind of regret not marrying him. So he just told me, you know, baby's gonna be loved by a lot of people, and I'm like, yeah, you know, that's probably true. And, you know, he said, oh, I'm off work, because I said, what are you doing today? And he said, oh, I'm off today. He was a truck driver. He was an over-the-road truck driver. He also worked for the city for a few, I don't know how many years, but he worked for the city for several years. The city of Denver, where I worked, just in the sanitation department. But so we talked that day, and, you know, we had our conversation about my baby and how, you know, the baby was going to be loved by a lot of people. And it's just like, I didn't think anything of it. He said, you know, if you have time after work, you know, stop by my house because I had to drive by his house. On my way home from work, I would pass by his house. And so at that point, I'm trying to get my lashes on because I'm taking too long. At that point, he said, you know, stop by the house if, you know, on your way home. And, you know, I was so tired and I was so heavy, and I really just wanted to get home. And, you know, at that point, it was like, you know, I had been spending a lot of time with my dad, just like having him over for dinner and, you know, taking him, you know, when I would go buy groceries, you know, I would get him a few things. And at this point, you know, I'm the only one out of my siblings who had a relationship with him, because everybody else was, you know, they were done. They had washed their hands of him, because of, you know, how mean he was over the years, you know. And I'm sure it was bad for them. You know, my brother Mark was already gone, and, you know, there was good reason why people didn't want to have a relationship with him. Like my mom, they never divorced, but like she just did not want to have a relationship with him. And I used to tell her, because he used to say, you know, he regretted so much with her, and, you know, he really wanted her back. And she just was just like, I'm like, it's over, you know. And you know when it's over, using my Tatcha silk canvas, and you know when it's over, it's over. Like when you're done in a relationship, especially like after so many years, you know, so much happened, and she was just done. So anyway, try to speed up the story. That's kind of just the backstory of, you know, the day that he died, and how, you know, I talked to him, and, you know, I really just wanted to get home and make dinner and just, you know, relax, and, you know, because you got work the next day, and I just didn't really feel once, you know, you went over there, he was like so alone that, you know, he didn't want you to leave. You know, he kind of wanted you to stay as long, you know, as he could keep you, and he didn't want you to leave. So I was just like, I just didn't want to go. Like, I just didn't want to go. And so anyway, I drove home, and I have to pass his house. So, you know, guilty does always worrying about people being upset or hurting their feelings. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just stop for a minute and then just let him know, you know, I have to get home and make dinner for the kids and stuff. And so I drove past his house, and I was like getting to his house, and I looked over and I saw that, you know, there was a car there. So I knew he had company. So, and he just said he was going to just hang out around the house, and I saw that he had company. So I was like, oh, cool. Well, he's got company, so, you know, I'm not going to stop. So I went straight home, which wasn't too far from him. It was about a 10-more-minute drive, and I went home and, you know, started making dinner, doing my routine, you know, changed my clothes, and just started going about my day. I mean, my night. And then we're eating dinner. We're about done with dinner, and then the phone rings, and it's my aunt, my dad's sister. And like, she never called me. And she was like, honey, she's like, I got a call from the hospital, from Lutheran Hospital, and your dad's there, and they took him from his house in an ambulance, and we don't really know like exactly what happened, but they said that, you know, he had a heart attack or something. So I was just like, whoa, you know. So I finished, you know, not finished dinner, but I got up and got myself together and got my kids, and Lutheran Hospital, you know, isn't far from where I lived. And so we drove to the hospital. I don't remember what family was there by the time I got there. And obviously, like, she called me because obviously she knew that we had a relationship still, and that my brothers, 2 living brothers, and my sister at the time, you know, they didn't want anything to do with him. So she had already known that I was the one that was just always there for him. So anyway, so she's like, they said he had a heart attack. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm on my way there, you know, and I'm pregnant. Like, I'm like the last thing I need is to, like, be traumatized again. And so get to the hospital, get up there. They have him on life support. I don't know if they just automatically put you on life support. I don't know if he was breathing on his own. Evidently, I mean, obviously he probably wasn't. And so they had, you know, the tube down his throat, and they were checking. So anyway, the doctor said that he had overdosed. And, you know, when you overdose, you have a heart attack, basically. And at that time, they didn't have, like, Narcan and stuff like that to bring you out of it, which he probably would have lived had they had it back then. So if you're not familiar with Narcan, they spray, like, it's like a little bottle, and they like spray it in your nose, and it's supposed to bring you, like, out of an overdose. So anywho, they didn't have that, and they had him on life support, whatever. They were, you know, we didn't know, like, what his state was, but they were checking for brain activity. And, you know, if he had brain activity, then, you know, there was a chance that he could come out of it. And there was no brain activity. So, we had to make the decision, and it was kind of up to me because, again, I was really the only one who was there for him. And so it was kind of like my decision. Yeah, it was just, like, kind of my decision. And to take him off life support, and I think it was the next day. I mean, I could be wrong. It was kind of all a blur, but I think it was the next day. And they took him off life support. You know, I told him it was okay to go, and, you know, I'll be fine, because I know he worried a lot about me, you know, even though it's, like, weird. Our relationship was weird, but it's hard to say that somebody abused you, but yet they worried a lot about you. But, you know, I think it was guilt, honestly. But he worried a lot about me, and so I just told him, you know, Dad, it's okay to go, you know. I know he wasn't happy, he was suffering, which was a lot of the reason, you know, that he was getting high so much. I mean, he was a drug addict, and, you know, sadly, I mean, he's a functioning drug addict. There's so many functioning drug addicts, like, as we speak, that you wouldn't even know they're living this secret life just to get through life, because sometimes when you are depressed and you suffer from mental illness, you self-medicate. And it's just so much easier to self-medicate than to try to, you know, work through your problems and try to get to the root of what's really going on. And, you know, I mean, I know ideally that's the healthiest thing to do, getting to the root, but sometimes getting to the root, for me personally, in my experience, sometimes getting to the root of things is really bringing up maybe stuff that we don't really even, we're better off not knowing. Personally, just from my experience. And so he died, and you know, I think you know where it went from there. You know, we had to plan a funeral and try to find if he had insurance and all that stuff, which he had given me his insurance paperwork, and then he had taken it back once because he said he was, I don't know, changing things, switching things or whatever. And so he got it back. So I wished I would have got it back from him, but I didn't. So, you know, whatever. Okay, fast forward about a year, and maybe not even quite that long. And my sister-in-law had stayed the night at my house on, I don't know, it was a weekend. And, you know, we did like a movie night or whatever. I don't know. I think that's what it was. It's been so long. And she stayed with her boyfriend, and she had never met my dad. And her boyfriend, like, nobody knew who my dad was. Like, I mean, a lot of people knew who my dad was, but these particular people didn't know my dad. And so the boyfriend, you know, we had all gone to bed, and the boyfriend got up to go, I don't know, go downstairs to the kitchen to get a pop. And he said that he walked through the living room, and as he was coming down the stairs, you could, as soon as you get to the bottom of the stairs to my living room from upstairs, you could kind of see, you could see the living room. And he looked over and he said, and this is like, I shit you not, and it was like, he looked over and saw a bunch of people sitting on the couch. There was some people sitting on the floor, some kids and people sitting on the floor in my living room. And there was, he even described like in detail, he's like, there was like some kids sitting on the floor like Indian style. And he was just like what the hell? And he went through the living room to my kitchen, and I guess he thought to himself, this is what he said, he thought to himself, okay, obviously I'm seeing things. Clearly there wasn't just a room full of random people. And he described it like a waiting room. That's what he described it like. Like he walked through a waiting room, like at a hospital. And so when he was coming back through the living room, there was a man sitting on, okay, so I had like this living room set where it had like a recliner on one end, you know, and then it kind of circled around sectional, and then it had another recliner at the other end, and then it had like a little thing in the middle where you could put your cups, lift it up for your remote control, whatever. Well, I used to sit on this one particular end. So he said that he came back through the living room and he looked over, and at that time there was a man sitting there, and he said the man was sitting there with his head down and just kind of like, you know, kind of like your head in your hands, but not really in your hands, just kind of like, just like with your head down. And he was like, what the hell? Okay, so he said he looks over, the man picks his head up, and he looked up and he was just like that, kind of just looking down, and then just went like that. And he described the man to a T of my dad. So when he went upstairs and told his girlfriend, oh my God, she said he looked like he saw a ghost. He was shaking. He was physically ill. And they didn't wake us up. Like, they didn't wake me up and say, hey, you know, this is what happened. They told us this the next day. And he was really like traumatized by it. And I was just like, no way. Like, I mean, you know, I wasn't surprised because a lot of that type of stuff happened. And so I was just like, whoa. I was like, okay, wait a minute. I was like, describe him to me. So he described him, and the way he described him was my dad, who he never met. And I didn't have any pictures around because, you know, I didn't really want my dad's pictures hanging around. Like, I had a relationship with him, but I didn't want pictures of him, you know, laying around my house. I just didn't want to see him. You know, I had mixed emotions for a lot of different reasons, and so I didn't have any pictures of him. I did have pictures of him, but they were in the closet, like in my closet. So he describes my dad to a T. I'm like, oh my God, like, it's real, you know? He saw my dad. And so I said, okay. He described him. I said, okay, let me get his picture. And I want you to tell me, I got a picture out with, there was a couple people in the picture. And I said, okay, I'm going to show you a picture and you tell me if you see the person in the picture who you saw sitting on my chair. And I showed him the picture and he was like, right, that's the man right there. Like, that's the man that I saw. Like, I mean, it was him. He's like, oh my God, that's the man I saw. And I was just like, wow, like, why, you know, why did he see that? I mean, I know my dad had a lot of guilt, and I'm not saying that my dad didn't go to heaven. I would love to believe that my dad went to heaven. I believe he went to heaven. But he saw my dad, and there was a lot of spirits. There was a lot of things that happened that I saw. Me and my youngest daughter were standing on the porch after my dad died, shortly after. Not my youngest daughter, my daughter Chanel. We were standing on the porch, and there was a pool house right in front of our townhome. There was a pool house there, and it was nighttime, and they had this like really pretty like old-fashioned lights like all around, just lighting up the whole path, you know, the whole walk around the buildings. Like, it was just really pretty. And they were just like those old-fashioned lamps. And so the only light was from the lamps. And we're just standing out there, you know, it's a summer night, and we're standing out there, and all of a sudden we see a silhouette of like the silhouette of my dad. Like, if you were to, you know, if he was to walk by, and his silhouette from the side, and his hair, everything was, the silhouette was on the pool house. And we were both like, she was like, oh my God, Mom. And I was like, what the heck? Like, we were just like, so at that time I was just like, I started like talking to him. I'm like, Dad, like, what's going on? Like, why are you letting yourself be seen? Like, is there something you're trying to tell me? Like, you know, like, what is it? Why are you here? I couldn't figure out. There's always a reason, you know, and I always want to know the reason for everything. And it was just like, why are you here? What are you trying to tell me? Well, my sister had been battling cancer, and she was, I think, in remission at that time. And long story short, the cancer came back, and my dad died my dad died February, I want to say February 8th. I had my daughter March 18th. So my sister's cancer came back. There was other things that happened in between, right? And I'm just like, we're just like, whoa, like, we're trying to find out like why things are happening, you know, asking questions. Before my dad died, my mom had a dream, and again, we're very sensitive. We have like intuitions. We know when something bad's gonna happen. It's just like, we don't always know exactly what it is that's gonna happen, but we know when something bad's gonna happen. So right before my dad died, my mom she had a dream of down, I don't know if anybody's familiar with down where Park Avenue, where a lot of the homeless people, the majority of the homeless people stay. It was down in that area, and you know, it's a drug area too, so it's like a real demonic area. That's what I think anyway. And she had a dream of one of them alleys over there. She saw the Grim Reaper poke his head out of the alley and pull it back. Like, literally, he's just this big black hooded, put his head out and pulled it back. She had that dream, And she knew that something was going to happen. Like she knew that something was going to happen. She wasn't sure what, but she was just like, I knew something was going to happen. Like I knew it. And oddly enough, like that's shortly after that my dad overdosed. And you know, she knew it. She just didn't know who it was. She didn't know when it was going to be. And I mean, again, like we get signs, but it's just like, okay, who is it? What is it? Every time somebody has a baby in my family or gets pregnant, we all start freaking out, because literally in my family, every time somebody would get pregnant or have a baby, somebody in my family would die. And so the following year, I had my daughter, March 18th. The following year, my sister's cancer came back, and she died March 2nd. Okay. All this stuff, seeing my dad, was all like after like April, May, June, you know, all these things were going on. And, you know, little signs. And then my sister's cancer came back. She was really sick. And after, I was going back and forth from work to her house, from work to her house, from work to her house on my lunch hour, and try to spend as much time with her as I could. You know, we had some really good heart-to-heart conversations, and sadly, real sad conversations. And this one night we were, I had just getting ready to leave for the night. Like everybody was coming and going, and it was just like, at that point it was like hospice was already involved. So hospice was involved. I'm trying to speed things up because I'm taking too long. My video is going to be super long. And it was a journey of watching my sister and watching the cancer spread from every part of her body that it could possibly go. And so we were leaving one night we were leaving and to go home. She lived way out south in South Denver, like towards Ken Carl, and I lived in Nevada. So I was driving home. I think I got to around the corner from my house, and my mom called. And no, it wasn't my brother. I think my brother called. Somebody called me and said, hey, you have to no, you know, it was my nephew. It was my nephew. So it was my sister's son called and said, Auntie, you have to come back to the house. Mom's fingers and toes are turning gray. And it was just like, and hospice said that, you know, it wasn't going to be much longer. And it was just like another nightmare, you know, another nightmare. And so I was like, no way, like, no, like, you know, you always believe that there, you know, there's still a chance that they're going to get healed. Like you just don't really ever like accept the fact that, like, you know, they're dying. I mean, every sign is showing, you know, that they're dying. Hospice is involved. They're preparing you. They're preparing the family, you know, for her passing, and, you know, to help her, you know, pass peacefully and with no pain, and, you know, or little pain. And, you know, they're just there to just guide you through. And so I was like, crap. So we turn around and go back. And when we're going back, this is the weirdest thing. When we're going back, we're about, I don't know, half a mile from her house. And there's this man walking on the side of the road in all black, white hair, and a white beard. Just walking randomly on the dark, just out in nowhere, like walking on the side of the road, and just like looks over, and we're just like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? It was just the weirdest. And it's like, who is that? Where did he come from? And why did he look at us like that? Like, he was like, and so we're freaked out already. I'm freaked out already because there's so many things that happen, and, you know, everything has a reason for happening. And, you know, I know that there's always signs, and, you know, so anyway, so we pull around the corner to my sister's cul-de-sac, and there was a bunch of cats. I'm talking probably about 5 or 6 cats, probably neighborhood cats, but whatever. Nevertheless, they were cats, and they were in front of the house, meowing, crying. And, you know, obviously we went in, we knew, like, this is some movie stuff, you guys. It's so sad, but on top of there was cats, on top of there's all these things happening, there's a couple balloons that go flying by. A couple black balloons. I know it sounds made up, but it's not. Like, you could fact check that with all my family. Like, there was a couple balloons that went flying by. So we get in there, long story short, you know, she doesn't make it through the night. She's not talking at this point at all. At all. She was just in a coma at that point. Earlier that day before we left, we were sitting in the living room, and she said, thank you, Joe, who was her husband, my brother-in-law. She said, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mom. And that's all she said. And they were like, you're welcome. Like, what are you thanking us for, you know? And she didn't say nothing else. So, obviously, she knew she was dying. She didn't know she was, but she knew she was. And so I believe that all the contact and my dad being around and coming and going and almost like trying to give me signs and maybe prepare me. And my dad did love me. As sick as he was, my dad loved me. And if nothing else, you know, I showed my dad the love of the Lord. And I just beat myself up for so long and was just like, why, you know, why did I stick around? Like, why did I take care of him? Why was I there for him when he did so many bad things to me? But, you know, he was still a human being. He was still a child. He was a baby once. And, you know, he was, you know, they say, is it nature or nurture? And it was nurture. It was nurture. It was what my grandparents did and what my grandma allowed for my grandfather to do, and the drugs. And there's no excuse for what he did at all. But he was still a human being at the end of the day. He was still my dad. And as much as that's not the type of relationship I wanted with my dad, it's a relationship that I had, and it was better than nothing to me at the time. Although it damaged me pretty bad, you know, for the rest of my life. You know, my story and bits and pieces of it, and I will share more. But I just believe that he was hanging around because he was showing me signs that kind of preparing me for he was going to be coming back to take my sister home. And that's what I believe to this day, that those were the signs. Are there still signs and are there still things happening? Yes, there are. But I mean, the one thing that just always stuck with me was when my sister-in-law's boyfriend, when he saw all that in there, and I was just like, no way, no way. And then when he described my dad, and then he pointed him out to me in a picture, I was just like, I knew it was my dad. And, you know, people could say I'm crazy all day long, but I know for a fact it was my dad. I know periodically when I'm sad or I'm praying and I'm crying, and I talk to, you know, my brother and two of my brothers now, and my sister, but more so my brother Mark and my dad, because those were the two people in my life who really, like, you know, they had a huge impact on my life. And although my brother Mark couldn't protect me, he was my best friend. And so, and I know that my dad regretted all the stuff that he did. And this video was not to go there or get emotional or anything. It was just to simply say that I believe in spirits. I believe in people not so much being stuck on earth, but I believe that when you call on them and you need them, that they're there. And that's what I believe, and that's what I'll believe to the day I die. A lot of people, Christians, will say, no, once you die, you're left. You're not here on earth anymore. You don't visit. You don't turn lights off and on. You don't, you know, show signs. Like, they just believe that if anything like that is happening, that it's demonic. And I believe the opposite. And anything that brings you comfort and joy, or not joy, but anything that brings you comfort from a loved one that you believe that's passed away and that is there for you, I believe wholeheartedly that that's their purpose and that's what they're doing. Not to say that they're not resting in peace or in heaven. I believe that they are, but I believe that they have the ability to come and go depending on what you need and how open you are to it. Not everybody's open to it. So the people that aren't open to it and don't believe in it are the people who don't experience it, which is why they think people like me and others, they think we're crazy. But, you know, I just think it's awesome. I think it's amazing to be able to have that, to be so open to it that you get to experience that. And to tell your stories, people think you're crazy, but some people are like, yeah, I get that. I know what you mean. It's happened to me. So for everybody who doesn't believe, there's also 5 other people who do believe, and that's all that matters to me. Like, I don't care if people think I'm crazy or not. But anyway, you guys, that's just a little story about the spirit of my dad and, you know, the things that led up to it, and him telling me that my daughter is going to be loved by many people. My youngest daughter, my children are all loved, but my youngest daughter has so many people in her life and so many people that wanted to be there for her and parent her. He was right, and he knew. And I mean, I love my children all the same. But, you know, he was right when he said that a lot of people were going to be there for her, and a lot of people were going to, you know, just love her and take care of her. And it does take a village sometimes to raise kids. I don't think it has to be a parent, a mother, or father. It's whoever's there. Of course I was there, but she was loved by many and still is. So anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed my little story time chit chat get ready with me, which was probably like an hour long. So I'm gonna have to try to put these pieces together and see. If it's too long, I might not post it, just because I don't want people to talk crap or whatever, but I might. I'll just go through the footage and see. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening, and leave me some ideas of videos. Like I always say, leave your comments, questions, and suggestions. Give this video a like if you liked it, if you found it helpful, informative, interesting. Let me know your thoughts on spirits and if you've experienced anything like this. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing you guys in my next one. And peace, love, and I appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Bye.